What's up, girlfriends? Welcome to Girlfriend Therapy Podcast. You guys know we are doing this year of conversations, and this has been the most enlightening time that I honestly can say that I have spent on this Girlfriend Therapy platform. I've met some amazing women, have connected with some amazing women that I've met, either virtually or in the past. And our guest today, Miss Felisha Hunter, is one of these amazing women that I've met. Actually, we met through another young lady that was bringing women together for a kind of like a prayer empowerment thing that she was doing. And Felisha and I were a part of that, and kind of met virtually, never met in person. But I am so excited when I was saying to do this year of conversations. I connected with Felisha again, and she has such a powerful story to share with us today. And I'm just excited to have her, to have her here. We're going to talk about mental health from a parenting perspective. So you guys remember we talked with Miss Kia Campbell a few weeks ago. And every time I think about that conversation, I still get goosebumps. And in preparation to talk with Felisha, I was just telling her, before we started that I'm like, as soon as she started talking, I get these goosebumps again. So I am incredibly excited, Felisha, to have you here. Thank you so much for being on our, Year of Conversations podcast. So I just want to kick it over to you to, kind of jump in and let's, get into the conversation.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I was telling Kwanza right before we started that this is actually the very first time that I am publicly sharing the details of my story. And I won't say my story, say our story. So it's not just me, it's my family. And just thinking about it, I was standing in my bathroom, I got kind of emotional because I'm like, oh my goodness, like once you put it out there, you can't pull it back.
Exactly.
So, but what I realized is that for a long time, it felt like we were on an island, that we were alone in all the things that we were dealing with. Nobody seemed to understand. And when I say nobody, I'm talking about talking to a doctor, like a pediatrician, or even a teacher or whatever.
Wow.
No one really understood this. And so this actually, for me, I hope that in our dialogue today, that it helps somebody else, that other parents won't feel alone like we did.
Exactly.
And I will tell you that it's been several years. My daughter, whom I'm talking about, is now, she'll be 13 in April. It seems like I just had that baby. So, and she reminded me of that yesterday, but she'll be 13 in April. Yeah. So all the stuff that comes with having a girl. But yeah, a teenager at that. And she's in middle school now. She is in the 7th grade. But Amari, just to kind of paint a picture for you with her personality, she is the child of two extroverts. My husband and I are both very social people. I would say that both of us are strong-willed. He would probably say me more than him. Both of us are stubborn. And my family would probably say, like, oh yeah, she is really stubborn. But his family also said the same thing about him as being, two stubborn individuals. So when you think about the kind of personality, the child that was created, we got a daughter who's strong-willed. She's an extrovert. She loves people.
Wow.
She's that person that she has a big heart. She want to help people, and even at an early age, she always had a tender heart for when people were struggling or they were going through things. I remember one time when we were at her grandfather's house. He was sick. This is her husband, my husband's father. He had passed away, and we were at the house. And Amari just stretched out. Like, I don't know who it was, but she stretched out in prayer. This is a little kid.
Wow.
I mean, she may have been 4, but she was always she had this it factor. Whatever that was, she had this it factor. And people, when you would meet her, even to this day, you would never forget her, because she just had this this isness about her that drew people in. And she had a heart for, she still has a heart for, wanting to help people. There have been many times that she would come home from school and she's like, Mom, Miss Pat's dog is sick. Can you pray for him? Mom, Miss such and such is out sick today. Can you pray for them? Just a really, tender heart for people. And in that, I knew that there is something big that God has. baby, because, you know, you can see the difference between your kids. And she had this, whatever this was, this anointing, I'm going to call it that.
Amen.
That, you know, that was so evident. And so with that, also, we had other challenges. This particular challenge people didn't see. And for several reasons. I don't think she could understand it.
Right.
We couldn't understand it. And it's like, Lord, what do I do? What the heck is this? And it was this, and I'm going to describe it. It was this anger, this irritability that would happen. And it's like she couldn't control it. And I saw it at a very early age, probably, I'm going to say maybe when she was in daycare.
Right.
So she was young, that I remember there were days when I would pick her up from daycare. And let's just say that she got in the car and she asked me for some cookies or something, and I didn't have cookies.
Right.
He would lose it.
Wow.
When I say lose it, I'm talking about kicking the seat. And I mean, I'm like, I don't have any cookies. Like, it was just that.
Right.
And it was just, I mean, any little thing, she would get irritated. So I remember asking the daycare provider, like, are you feeding her? Like, is she hungry? Or like, what's up? And she was like, no, Felisha, like, she had a snack before you walked in.
Wow.
So it wasn't that. But as she got older, it continued to grow.
Right.
It continued to grow, that any little thing, I'm talking about, it could be the smallest thing. It could be that somebody left something on the floor and she would just explode.
Wow.
And it would never happen in front of anyone. It was always at home. And so when it happened at home, you know, you're thinking, well, what am I not doing?
Right.
Am I being passive? Am I being permissive? Am I allowing things that they don't allow at daycare? Am I allowing things that they don't allow at school? Right. And I'll tell you, like, I'm pretty structured, especially when it comes to my kids. I'm just, you know, like, look, this is what we're going to do. And so it was mind-boggling. I didn't understand it. And my husband didn't understand it. And just to give you a kind of a background of us, I come from a family of 8. My mother gave birth to 8 children. I have 6 brothers and 1 sister. And then my husband comes from a family of 3. And he's the baby. And I'm number 3 in line. Okay. And so we grew up in the country. I would say I'm from South Georgia. He's from Florida. And we had a very, you know, traditional family. We act up, we got whooped, you know, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, we were in church, all the things. So it wasn't like we had come from a place where our parents just let us, quote unquote, run wild. Exactly. If we got in trouble, we would go get switches, you know, like, you gotta go pick your own switch. Yeah. So for her, to be experiencing this, your first thought is, she just need a whooping. She need this or whatever. You know, it wasn't working. It was not working. And in fact, it created more of an explosion. Oh, wow. It created more. So any type of conventional punishment or conventional approaches, it just didn't work. Right. And as I said, it continued to grow as she got older. We saw it in school, but it, once again, never at home. It was as if she literally would get off the bus and walk in the door, and boom, you know, it's like she's held all of that in. And yeah, that's what I was going to say. Exactly. She's held it all in, and it was never anything that you can, you know, fully explain. You just didn't understand. I know what I saw. Like, okay, she didn't have this. So you would think, okay, all of that created this. That's what you're thinking. Like, go to your room. You can't do this. You're on punishment. What? None of that worked. Wow. And because she is such a social person, putting her in her room is like throwing gasoline on a fire, because she's social. So it's like, you isolating me, like I can't be around people. That was just, it was hell. I'm just calling it what it is. It was hell.
Now, you have other children as well, or is she an only child?
No, I have a son. Okay. I have a son who, like, you think, raised by the same parents or whatever. We didn't deal with these issues at all.
Now, is he older or younger?
He's older. As a matter of fact, my son is 10 years, they're 10 years apart. I was previously married. And so my son, when I got remarried, my son was, I believe he was maybe 4 or 5. Okay. So he was young. So when we had her, they're 10 years apart, but both of them raised in the same household and everything. So under the same rules, everything. it just, with her, it was just different. And so I remember mentioning it to her teacher, and her teacher's like, no, we don't have these issues. And I remember even one teacher said, do you all, believe in paddling? Because, when my daughter acts up, I get this little ruler. I'm like, ma'am, you don't even,
Right.
yeah. I remember even mentioning it to her pediatrician. Like,
Wow.
ma'am, there is something. And I remember her talking to my baby, and she said, now, sweetheart, you got to do your homework, and and I'm just like, okay.
Like, you don't get it. Yeah.
You don't get it. You don't get it. And I will tell you, it was so defeating because I didn't know anybody that did get it. And I even remember, like, there were only a few people that would see this behavior. Okay. And they had to be very emotionally close to her, like my sister, or maybe a couple of friends that really knew the heart of her. Right. They would get to see it. But as far as friends or she would literally hold it together. And so I remember when people would see it, sometimes you got people looking at parents with the side eye, like, oh, they just need to beat that kid, or she's this, or she's so spoiled, or she's so, you get all of that. Exactly. And I knew, like I said, Rod and I both came from, a pretty structured family. And so he's also very old school, right, in his thought processes and everything. The up that I had was because I work for a nonprofit organization, and we work with students who are at risk. Oh, so some of the behavior that I had seen some of them enough, not to this level, but enough to make me ask a question. Exactly. For him, he hadn't seen that. And plus, he's a vet. He was in the military. Oh, they're very, yes. They're very, like, to the by the book. And I would always say, Rod, we're not one of your soldiers. Like, back up, whatever. So it was extremely hard for him. And while Amari is his only biological child, so you can imagine as a father what that felt like, to see all of this and how defeating it was when you had no answer. You didn't know what the heck was going on. So like I said, we've been dealing with this for a number of years. And praise God, one day I was at church, and at the church I go to is a pretty small church. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lady who was there who was talking to my son. I later found out that she was a psychologist. Okay. And so, my son he was dealing with teenage issues, nothing too extreme, but teenage issues. Right. And I remember saying, you know what? He had done counseling before, but I said, maybe I could bring her in to talk to him. Not even thinking about the Amari issue. Sure, I was still trying to figure that one out. And so I remember she talked, and she said, Mom, he's going to be okay or whatever. And she was like, just keep doing, he's a good kid, all of this. And I remember maybe a couple of days later, we had this big explosion with my daughter. Right. Let me just kind of paint a picture what her explosions look like. Her explosions would be so bad, her room would be, it's not now, because my husband he repaired it, and we haven't had any more holes. We have holes in the wall. I'm talking about not a little hole. I'm talking about like a big old hole. Oh, wow. So angry, and just, it's like it didn't have anywhere to go. And to try to talk to her, calm her down or whatever, it was none of that. And so it was just, kicked in, and it was just, yeah. Literally the room was destroyed. Wow. And at first he would repair the holes. He would go and he would repair them. And then he got to a point where he was like, I'm not repairing anything. You know what? Just leave it like that or whatever. And I remember there was this one hole that she put in the wall. And this hole, so my relaxation room that I told you about, is next door to her room. And so the hole was so big, it was in the closet, that she almost went through the other people. They made houses with sheetrock. It was that big. It was that anger. She had gotten that angry. And then I remember, like, okay, well, maybe if we don't repair the holes, I actually bought some of those, what do you call it? Like foam, like you put this foam on the wall.
Right. Okay.
Like try to make it look, you know,
Pat the
whatever.
walls.
Yeah, try to pat the walls or whatever. But she and the good thing is that when she would have an episode, when she finally like came out of it, she was very remorseful. She was exhausted, first of all, but she was very remorseful, and she couldn't explain it. She couldn't explain why she had gotten that mad or anything.
Wow.
So in meeting with this, and talking to this particular lady, well, I had her information, so I called her up and I left her a message. And I said, I know you spoke with my son, but who I want to talk to you about is my daughter. And I hope that if you can't help us, that maybe you're able to point us in the right direction. Because I also knew that she primarily worked with younger people.
Right.
And so I'm like, help point us in the right direction. Now, previously, when my daughter was 7 years old, we had her tested for ADHD, and, you know, it was evidence she had ADHD.
Right.
But this was like totally something
else, right?
So I called her up. She called me back and she said, yeah. She said, absolutely. Come on. I explained. She said she knew exactly what I was talking about. She was like, let's get an appointment set up.
Wow.
And so I was like, Lord, thank you. And I told my husband and everything. And, you know, he's like, okay, you know, I'll go. But, you know, I'm sure his thoughts was, ain't no help for this. And so, and I'm sure his thoughts were, she just bad, she, you know, whatever, but it was something bigger. And it's like I said, you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
So I remember we went to her office and we sat down. Amari's with us. So first she wanted to talk to us, you know, parents, before she talked with Amari. She knew Amari because, you know, she's in her church. Her husband is a cardiologist. I didn't know that she was also a doctor.
Wow.
And so we're sitting there and we're talking, and I'm just like, at that point, it's like real dialogue. I'm putting it all on the table, everything. And I shared with her, and she was like, she knew exactly what we were talking about. And I just remember at that moment thinking, thank you,
Amen.
Like, Lord, because I mean, it got to a point that I'm like, as my mom would say, I didn't know if I was going or coming.
Right.
I didn't know what the heck was going on with my baby. I didn't know, you know, for us, there was tension in our house. It just, you know, everybody look, you know, it's like we all on eggshells and everything. You didn't know, like, okay, I don't know what's gonna set her off or whatever. And so she said, okay, we put a plan together and everything. And she also was going to connect us. She connected us with a psychiatrist. Mari was already taking meds for ADHD. So there was no like psychotherapy drugs or anything that she had taken. But she was like, are you open to that? And I was like, absolutely. You know, I'm one of those people. I'm like, look, I believe God made doctors. I believe God gave them the ability to do this, that, and the other. So I was not going to be like, well, no, I don't want her to take this. I don't want her to be dependent on it. But we had to do something in order for her to be treated. So, you know, it's like, okay, we can do all the coping skills and therapy and everything, which I had done therapy with her before. But it's interesting because when I did therapy with her before, I didn't do it with a doctor. I did it with a social, you know what I mean? But I can't think of it, and nothing against her or whatever. But the thing is that she never saw what we were saying. She never saw it because Mari kept it. She kept it. So this particular lady, what I really liked about her is like she had that, if she was gonna push enough that she can get this to come out of her, so she could see exactly what we were talking about. And she had people that she was currently giving therapy to that were dealing with a lot of the same issues. And so when I tell you it was a godsend, so she connected us also with another doctor who was a psychiatrist. And so we had, and ironically, her son went to this psychiatrist for, I think he had ADHD as well, but for medication management. So we had her with the therapy, and we had this other doctor and these were both strong African-American women. Not that mattered, but, but it really mattered because I'm like, you know, it just, I'm like,
Because that
okay.
sensitivity as well, and that
Yes.
representation and the
Yes.
connection to, yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So they were very, very strong. They were great doctors, strong women and everything. And it also helped for Amari to normalize this, to say, you know what? Ain't nothing like, you know what I mean? Like, you're broken. This is something that we got to deal with. And for them to, okay, I've seen this before. This is how we're going to approach it and everything. And so when I tell you it was a godsend, that I was just like, oh, Jesus, thank you. I'm like, he created the all-star team. So I had God here. We had these ladies and us. And so Amari was doing therapy every week. And here's the thing. She was out of network with our insurance, which means, out of network is more expensive. She split her price and she's like, what can you handle? So I was just like, you know what? When I remember walking out of her office for that first appointment, I told her that was the best money I ever spent. It was the best money I ever spent. On top of, she had an amazing staff. She has an amazing staff that helped us out. That was really, just everybody was in with treatment. Then she was like, if I need to go to the school and talk to them to make sure, we have everything in place for her, whatever. They were willing to do whatever they needed to do to help her. Yeah. So when I tell you, so we went to the psychiatrist. So she was ultimately diagnosed with, so as I said, she had ADHD. Right. But then she was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder and DMDD. And DMDD is, look, I just went blank. Right. Disruptive mood. Hold on. Like, look, I know this. I literally just went blank. Take it time. It's DMDD, but it is a disorder where kids deal with extreme irritability or intense temper tantrums and that sort of thing. And back in the day, this wasn't something that was on the scale. Right. They actually, so kids that dealt with this, they actually wanted to say that they had bipolar. But then it was like, they're too young to be diagnosing them with bipolar. So they created this new diagnosis, and it's called DMDD. And I was like, my goodness, I can't believe I just went blank. Now you're going to make me pick it up. Because I want to make sure I give the right terminology. Did you say E as in egg? D as in dog. There it is. It's disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. I'm sorry, I just literally blank. Yeah, D as in David, MDD. Yes. Okay. Disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. Dysregulation disorder. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so she was diagnosed with that. Well, as we kept digging in more, and we're seeing the outbursts, they weren't all the time. They were kind of like intermittent, right? Different things. Then the diagnosis was slightly changed to what is called intermittent explosive disorder. Okay. And these are more, they're intermittent. It is very impulsive and that sort of thing. So there's like a slight difference, but still kind of all in the same DSM-5 diagnoses. But so we were, those were being treated. She also, during all this time, she has spent she's had 3 episodes where she's had to go to acute care, which is going to a hospital that specializes in mental, mental health. She had to go and spend I think the longest she was at one of those was probably maybe about 7 to 8 days. Okay. But acute only it almost like it just regulates. It's not really treatment. I mean, they'll do, some therapy or whatever, but it's also more medication management or whatever. Right. And I think the first time she went, was probably in 2020 in January. Oh, wow. She went again in 2020 in December. Wow. She went again in 2021 in, I believe it may be April or I think March or April. So this was like recently. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. And so so when she was there, as I said, we did all the different programs and everything, but there was still, and we saw there was glimpses of things getting better. Like you'll see glimpses, but then it's like you'll get here and then you go all the way back down. You get here, you go all the way back down. And we at that point, I think the last time she went, we were considering looking at residential care. Residential in the sense of we need something that's a little bit more longer time for treatment, not one you go for 3 or 4 or 5 days and then you come home. We need something that's like, that we need to really get care for her. And the things that sent us to acute care, and I can't say that, like, she would always say things like, I wish I would die. I don't want to be here. I hate myself. My family hates me. All these types of things or whatever. And she never tried to harm herself. But what I was afraid of was that she would get so caught up, like the emotional deregulation, that, and when she was in that space, she would unintentionally harm herself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so those were the things that, times that we just had to, okay, we got to do something about this, because she could really harm herself. I remember being afraid to, because she was of the age that I could go to the store and leave her at home by herself or whatever, that I'm like, nope, you got to get in the car with me. I remember even not wanting to leave her with other people, because they didn't understand what she was feeling. And I didn't want, somebody who didn't understand it would react in a certain way. And, and I didn't want to put them in a position, but I certainly didn't want to put my baby in a position.
Absolutely.
And so, so I was very careful about who I would allow her to be with, who we would stay with, whether I needed to go, something for work or whatever for a few days. I was very careful about that. So the people that actually was close to her, and they knew. But like I said, she went to acute care 3 different times. And the last time, that's when we started looking at, okay, maybe we need to try residential care. But I will tell you, finding a residential care for a kid, but not only just for a child, which is her age, but also finding one that's therapeutic and academic is very challenging, because most of them it's almost set up like a prison. It's punishment. Because you did this, you're going to do, and I did not want that for her. What I wanted her to know is that, what? There is something that we need help with, that we have to deal with. And that doesn't mean that you're on punishment. I didn't want a punitive thing, whatsoever. So to find that was hard. To find it was really hard. And it's very expensive.
I can imagine.
Extremely expensive. And I will tell you, I was talking about how people could be judgmental in the comments and different things that you might get. This right here really caused me to address some things that I may have thought, or my own insecurities, or even my own judgmental thought process or whatever. Because I can remember, I'm sure you've done it. You be in a store and you see a kid showing out, acting like, what? She just need to beat him. That mom doing this or whatever the case may be. And this caused me to have compassion and realize, what? It's not always what I see. That we'll call something. I'm like, and now I see it, and I'm like, my heart just goes out to that parent, because I'm like, I understand. I completely understand when you just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And so we finally the good thing with having these doctors also, they were researching for us. When I tell you, her name is Miss Julie. Miss Julie was doing the homework, trying to make sure. And the good thing is she had an inside in everywhere. So she had an inside person. And she'll call and she's asking different questions. And we didn't want anything that was big. We wanted a small environment for her, and one that she was really going to be treated. Like they were going to spend time treating her. Also that, it was going to require her not being in school. I wanted to make sure she was still getting the academic piece of it and everything. And so finally, things were going well. It was going well at the house, but there was still this piece we needed to address. And so we got a bed at a location. Wow. We got a bed, so it's like, oh my goodness, how am I going to tell her this? Meaning her, my daughter. How am I going to break this to her? And the crazy part was, now I said she was in acute care before. One of those times she wasn't with us on Christmas. So the one that happened in December of 2020, she wasn't with us on Christmas Day. She got home back on New Year, right before the day before, well, New Year's Eve. But on Christmas Day, and that was hard. Oh my goodness, that was hard.
I'm sure hard for everybody.
It was for the entire family. It was just a hard thing. And so this particular time, we were getting very close to Thanksgiving. And it's one of those where they got you, like, you have to go through so much paperwork, so much red tape to get approval.
Right.
You know, and I'm thinking, like, you know what? This is crazy, because if you got something going on with you, you go to the hospital, they don't put you on a wait list if you need to be checked in.
Exactly.
You go to the hospital. But when it comes to our mental health, it's such a stigma there. And so you have to wait for a bed, but you also have to go through so much red tape to get approval. I had to do applications. I had to do applications. My doctor had to do an application. I mean, well, she had to do a referral. And it's not just my doctor saying, I need this or whatever. She got to answer all kinds of questions and everything for them to see if you got a case to do residential. Isn't that something?
And then you still have to pay out of pocket for it, or?
For that particular thing, the insurance would cover it. But of course, you go to a specialized unit. Right. And, when you look at your insurance card, there's a place that says mental, whatever. And, so it's totally different. So even I just think about just the way the whole system is set up, it's really sad. It's really sad because I'm like, we talk about there's a stigma with mental health in the African-American community. It's not just the African-American community. It's the whole setup, the whole system. Yeah. It is a stigma that if something is wrong with your brain, there's something's wrong with, oh no, we got to get this person away. Like, think about mental health hospitals. They're behind stuff. You a lot of times don't know they're in a community or whatever because they're hidden. And I just, when I really think about that, I think how many people don't get help because of that.
Exactly. Because like you said, all of the red tape and
all the red tape, all the so much. So we literally had to go through all of this. Then you go to your insurance. They send it to the insurance company to see if the insurance company is going to pay for it. So they have to approve it also. So once you get clearance, now you're waiting on a space. Right. And so a space became available probably about a week before Thanksgiving of last year. Yeah, of last year. A space became available. And so now, as I said, it's telling her, how do I tell her this? And I remember my husband and I, we had dinner and everything. We were getting ready for dinner and we sat her down and we told her. And oh my goodness, she cried and, she was trying to, like, who approved this? My daughter. Like, who made this decision? Like, who authorized this or whatever? But I'm doing so well, Mom, and all of this. So when my heart just went up because I understood exactly what she was like. I'm not going to be here with the family for Thanksgiving. I missed Christmas last year and all of this. And so I remember in that moment, I'm sitting there and I'm talking to her and my husband said to her, so as I said, he was military and he's dealt with PTSD, for his service. And he shared that with her. He had never shared that. At that point, it was almost like connecting wounds, like my wounds to your wounds. When I tell you, and I mean, he teared up and he told her, he was like, I want you to get treatment so you don't have to deal with some of the challenges that I've dealt with as a result of this. And I was just like, in that moment, like, Lord, thank you. I just hushed. At that point, I'm like, I'm not saying anything. Just let him and her have that moment and they talk. And so we, we had to withdraw her from school and, let all of them know what we were doing and everything. And we took her in, like, it was that night. So we got her admitted that night and everything. And she was there from November until right before Christmas. So she was there about a month.
Wow.
She was there about a month. And, you know, and I remember saying, you know what, Lord, I remember praying and going on prayer walks and everything. But I also said, you know what, I am no longer going to be on an island.
Right.
We're no longer gonna quote unquote suffer in silence. And so I said, I remember because my work family knew what was going on because, you know, I mean, they see me every day, you know, like, and
exactly.
they know her, and they were praying, and everybody was praying. But when it came to this, I remember I created a video, and I just got on screen, and I invited people, a group of people, and I said, we're gonna form a prayer circle.
Amen.
And I asked them to join me in praying for her. And I'm like, if you want to fast, whatever the Spirit leads you to do, because I'm like, this right here goes above my mommy skills. We gotta call.
I need the what is that? I need the village. Yes.
I'm like, you know what? I need help. I need people to join alongside of me. And when I tell you, the response was overwhelming.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. It was so powerful. It was overwhelming.
Wow.
And I'm like, you know what? That was probably the first time that it didn't feel like a weight that I was carrying by myself. Yeah. Yeah.
I tell you what, these goosebumps, I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah. It was so powerful. And I'm like, you know what? And I even created I can't even think of the name of it. Oh God, but it was a calendar. Let's call it a calendar. And I had dates. Like if you will sign up for dates, that you were gonna pray for her. And we were like, we're gonna fill up all those dates. And I'm telling you, everybody came through. And even people that did not sign up, they were emailing me, they'll text me and everything, like, Felisha, we're praying for her. We got her, because everybody know her. Like, we don't know about her. They were like, we're gonna pray her through this. And then I also had them, because she was there for Thanksgiving, we were going to be able to go and visit her for Thanksgiving. You know, with COVID, of course, that created all kinds of challenges where before families could go in and all that was limited. So on top of her being there, we couldn't see her physically. We couldn't see her physical body. So when she would have her therapy, we had our family therapist therapy sessions, we would all be online on screen, and we could see her. There was no physical interaction. And I'll tell you, the first few days she was there, she would call me every night crying. And they every other night, because they had a schedule for, you know, when they can call and everything. I could call anytime, but for them to be able to call, she would call me crying, and Mom, you know what, coming, I don't belong here, I this, that, and the other, or whatever. So trying to still be strong. She would always say at the end, Mommy, would you pray for me?
Amen.
Mommy, would you pray for me? So I'm like, okay, that baby understands the power of prayer.
Exactly. Now, so she, at this time, she's what, like 11?
She's 12. She's 12. She was 12. This was just last. Yeah, November, December, yeah.
And so, like, along with getting the help that she needed, she learning and understanding, like getting a better understanding of what's going on with her.
What's going on, yes. Yeah. She's getting a better understanding of what's going on. And you know, she had the places she had gone before. She was, and even with her therapist giving her coping skills and everything. It's kind of like, yeah, I got coping skills, but I'm still in the throes of it. She needed to be removed from it for those coping skills to really, like, for her to really take everything to take effect, everything she was learning and all of it. And so she was there, and we would see her online, but the first time that I actually saw her was Thanksgiving Day. And so, you know, she came out, you know, she looking all pretty and everything, but this girl probably lost the whole time she was there. She probably lost about 18 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 18 pounds. Because she, you know, kids, the food's not good. It's not, you know, whatever. But it was stressful. You know, she wasn't at home. She was in a new environment and everything. And then, you know, you got other kids that were in there. So they had different units. So the unit she was in a unit where kids dealt with issues that were similar to hers. And so they had group therapy. And it was so interesting because Amari's therapist said, well, Amari knows everybody on the hall. She did. She knew the doctors. She knew the nurses. She knew. I mean, that's her personality.
Exactly.
She knew. She was like, she knew and she knew what everybody was there for. All the other kids or whatever. I'm like, Amari, I need you to focus on you. That's just who she is.
Right.
And so she was there, and she was there, like I said, for about a month. Well, after she was getting out, when she was going to be released, and they don't tell them when they're going to be released, they just tell the parents. So we know up front when she's going to, what the time frame is, the anticipated time frame. But as it goes, they'll let you know, like, if it's changing, right. So they're staying in very close contact. And it was interesting because one of the nurses said, ma'am, he said, I want you to know, he said, well, you might get tired of us calling you because we call about absolutely anything. If your daughter hit her big toe, we're gonna call. If she, like whatever, we're gonna call. But I appreciated that.
Absolutely.
I appreciated that. And so she had a great team, her doctors that from the outside, they were there too, working alongside of everybody. And so then after she got out, she was going to be released. It's kind of like, let's just use military for an example. When somebody gets out of the military, they don't just release them into, there's like something
like
they
a re-entry kind of into acclimate and all. Yeah,
absolutely, exactly. So I'm like, okay, we know that she needs that. And so one of the programs they were referring her to, I really didn't care for her to go to, but then there was another one that that they talked about, and I said, you know what? I think this her therapist actually used to work there, and she said, I think this will be good for her. And this particular place offered what is called as BBT. It's called diabolical behavioral therapy. And this is a form of like a modified cognitive behavioral therapy. It's still, psychotherapy, but what they focus on is helping you to like live in the moment, helping you to regulate your emotions, helping you to, what is it? Helping you to deal with stress and that sort of thing. And it was a 6-week program. Once again, you got to be approved for it.
It's something because the minute you mentioned that, I'm thinking like this is something that we all could benefit from.
Oh, right? My goodness. When I tell you, oh my goodness, it is a very different way of thinking.
Yeah.
Unlike you probably, but certainly myself, the way in which we were raised. Totally different. And so with this, like I said, she had to be approved to join the group and everything. And once again, it's costly. But I tell you, God has provided the entire time. We ain't missed no meals. My car still got gas. We ain't missed out going on family vacation or anything. God has provided. And so with this training, one that's in person, she was actually too young for. Because it's like it goes, I think it started 13, but they had one that was online that she could get into that was for her age group. And so I talked to everybody and we got everything connected or whatever, and it was going to be a 6-week program, and it's going to be Monday through Thursday online, which meant that she had to get out of school early. It was from 3 to 6. And so when she went back to school, now she's like, we got her back in her regular school. We got back in. I talked to the social worker, the counselor there, and told her she was very helpful. And she said, okay, here's what we're going to do. They set her program, like everything, like she's going to leave every day at this time. So, my schedule was flexible enough that I could make sure I left work days that I didn't work from home to go and get her online and everything. And when I tell you that just all the things that we've been able to, the help we've been able to get has been life-changing.
It sounds like it is. Such a journey.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. But
life-changing.
Yeah. But and I'm sure not only have you guys learned so much, but even for her, I think it's so powerful that you and your husband were so involved. And by the grace of God, he connected you all with, with those resources that can help everybody, not just understand it, but learn how to cope and deal. Learn how to,
because we had to learn coping skills too. You think when you come from an environment where it's like, okay, you acting up, you putting on punishment. I mean, when I tell you punishment, spanking, reward systems,
Right.
you know, everything that it didn't work. It was not working. You know, I had somebody tell me, you know what, just put her in a room and take everything from her and all of this or what. It's not working. In fact, it was a breeding ground for more explosions.
That's what I was going to say, because you're not dealing with the whole person. Like,
exactly.
You can't isolate the issue.
You can't isolate
right?
the issue. Exactly.
Wow.
And those things were very isolating. Like, okay, well, you see this situation right here, you deal with this. But there was an imbalance that was going on. And then I was reading books, and my husband's like, you read that book reading to you.
Right.
Because I mean, I can't tell you how many times that I had to pivot. And you know, just okay, this is not working. Let me try this. Let me move over here. Let me try this or whatever. There had to be some flexibility. If you thought, if for one moment we thought we were just gonna do
figured it out,
go this way kind of way, it wasn't working. It was gonna be constant distress. And so I'm like, okay, this is we gotta figure something out. So all of this, along certainly with prayer, helped us. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I was like, God, what the heck? Like, Lord, questioning God. And I hear people like, oh, you're not supposed to question God. I'm like, where y'all read that at?
Exactly.
I'm like, because God tells us, like, Lord, you know, we need wisdom to ask the Lord. He's not going to punish us for asking him, but we got to make sure when we ask him, our faith is in him, not the other stuff. And I'm like, so to get wisdom, we ask questions. When I want to know something, I ask questions. So I ask questions. And sometimes it was the hard question. Sometimes the question was, why?
Right.
Why, God?
Yeah.
You know, why? What are you doing in this? And I remember a long time ago, this lady that volunteered in an organization I work with, her daughter dealt with ADHD, and she would always be telling me different things she tried. She said to me one day, she said, Amari is going to be your ministry. And I'm like, if she don't kill me first, you know, and I think that has always stuck in my head, because I think about Kwanza, how many parents are currently in the situation that we dealt, and they don't know where to go. They don't have any resource, or the shame, because I felt shame.
That's what I was going to say. The fear of judgment, right? Yeah.
The shame, because I'm like, people are judgmental, you know, they're going to judge you, get all the, they're just, you know, y'all are just passive, you know, y'all aren't being disciplinarian, you ain't doing this, y'all give everything, y'all this, whatever. My daughter's probably the only kid on the planet that doesn't have a cell phone. And you know what? She doesn't have a cell phone because right now it's dangerous. I cannot give her a cell phone. I'm like, we already have enough to deal with. Giving her a cell phone is adding stuff. And I'm like, you know what? If she want to use the phone, she can use my phone. Or I have a house phone. And I'm like, here's a cell phone. Her voice is on it. And I mean, here's our cordless phone. Her voice is on it. And then I'm like, call Amari phone. Call Amari phone. And when she want to talk to her friends, or she want to FaceTime, she'll either get on my phone, or they may Zoom or whatever. But, you know, it was just, we had to do what was best for our family.
Absolutely.
And I think so many times what happened is we get so caught up with the way society says we should address things or shouldn't address, or there's this shame or whatever it is that we face, that, you know, we don't deal with it, or we I remember being in that space, but no longer. No longer.
It may be too early to tell. I don't know, because you said she just kind of went through the residential facility. So how is she now, and how is like you guys' relationship? Like
when I tell you, there's such a peace in here.
Amen.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Wow.
Since she has returned, I think she had one episode where, and it wasn't even that bad. That she was able to shift. But she hasn't, I mean, when she feels herself like getting, you know, anxious, overly anxious or whatever, she'll say, I need a moment.
Amen.
I need to use my coping skills. So
Amen.
she recognized the self-awareness is big.
Yes.
She recognized it. And then also it's changing. Well, for me, it's changing it changed me. It grew me.
Exactly.
Because I also know that I had to allow her to use her coping skills, because sometimes as parents, we can have all these expectations of our kids and everything.
Exactly.
Not realizing, you know what, that doesn't mean that my kid is incapable or my kid is whatever. It just means, you know what, I got to pay attention to what my kid needs, not what I need or what I want to do, but what she needs. And so when I pull back, because when I pull back, then when there's something that needs to be talked about or dealt with, now she can hear me.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's powerful too, because I know even when Kia, when she was talking about like dealing with mental illness or mental health, she was saying that once she accepted it, then it just made it so much easier to deal with.
Yeah.
So if you could just talk a little bit more about that. I think especially, I love the fact that you're talking about it from a parenting perspective, but then also infusing like the way we were raised, that generational, kind of way we were raised, as well as the faith part, the Christian part about it as well. Yeah, and I'm going to take myself off of camera, so don't worry, I'm still listening.
Okay.
But
okay, no problem.
I just want you to talk about that a little bit.
Okay, all right, yeah. So I think I remember hearing Kia talk about that, because I watched that episode you did with her, and I think that one of the biggest things is that when it comes to the church, this is really sad. Pray it away. Just give it to God or whatever. Yeah, I'm giving it to God. But he didn't say, Felisha, just stand still. You do your part. Like, keep it moving. And I think that a lot of times we won't address certain things because of, like I said, there's this stigma when it comes to mental health. I remember even growing up, if we saw something that was kind of off with somebody, one of the things that we would say, oh, you know how Billy is. You know how such and such is. We wouldn't call it what it was. They need help. They need help. And so I'm thankful that not only like the church community that I'm a part of, that they're really big with wholeness. And what's so interesting is, for whatever reason, we try to disconnect our brain with everything else in our body. And our brain is the thing that makes everything go. So if there's something going on with our mental, then you know what, you got to give attention to it, because otherwise, you know what I mean, because like, there's no in this culture we disconnect the two. But I will tell you, the generation we have now is doing something that our generation didn't do. They're addressing the mental health challenges that they're facing. They're letting you know, I deal with anxiety, I'm depressed, I'm this, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for that, because my generation, your generation, we didn't deal with that. No. We want to give somebody scriptures to read. Listen, I'm telling you, I'm praying, I'm a prayer warrior, I'm reading my Bible and everything. But I know that God created, he works through people. And so, so if I could get people to understand, listen, stop disconnecting to the two, mind, body, and soul. That's all together. That's the wholeness of who we are.
Exactly. And I think it's so powerful too, because I think the stigma of it is certainly being lifted. And I think when I was talking with, when we were talking before we got on camera, just talking about how, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but talking about how, where was I going with it? But I think just talking about like dealing with it, talking about it, or we were talking about how with COVID, that's where I was going with it. We kind of talking about like with COVID, it caused a lot of us to kind of re-examine our mental health on so many different levels. And I think coming out of COVID, or if we're coming out of it, I think that has really opened the door where people are kind of like really open to the conversation even though, you know, not just the conversation, but even the idea of there could be some kind of mental strain.
It could become absolutely,
right.
Absolutely.
That kind of that's leaving me not at my best self, whatever
absolutely.
it is, right?
Yeah. And I mean, because I even for us, what I understood is that there was so much that I was pouring into my daughter, trying to help her, trying to find answers, seek help and everything, that I also recognized that I had to give attention to my own health. And so, I mean, I got a therapist online, like, you know, it was crazy because right around that, all this stuff we're dealing with, I developed COVID. I had COVID and I was out of work for 3 months.
Right.
My grandmother passed away of COVID. She was in our household when she got sick.
Wow.
And so, you know, my sister got it, my brother, like we all had it around the same time. And then 3 months after that, my aunt died. So we had crisis, trauma after trauma after trauma. And I'm like, we got to deal with this. And I remember like talking to my therapist and like calling her up. Look, I need somebody to talk to. And so I think a lot of times, even as parents, when we're dealing with things, sometimes we can forget about self.
Yes.
We can forget about self and you start neglecting things. So now, like my daughter, I was like, I can't help her if I'm operating on empty. Exactly. And so I had to make sure that I was being taken care of as well. Absolutely. And even like, you know, helping my husband to make sure taking care of yourself, because I cannot give to her if I'm operating on empty. And I think that, as you said, with COVID, it has forced us to give attention to some things that we didn't give attention to. And because it's so widespread, I can't tell you how many times I talk to principals and teachers and people who are in the education system and academic who are talking about how kids at that school, anxiety levels are high, depression is higher than, I mean, they too are like, help, you know, because, and teachers don't know how to deal with it. You don't know how to deal with, you know, because you got kids coming from all walks of life, all different backgrounds, and the teacher themselves might be dealing with something. So, you know, think about it, it's like it's a breeding ground that if we don't address it, it's destructive. And that for me was enough for us to get help for my daughter, because I told her, I remember saying to her, you're looking at right now, you're like, but mommy, I'm doing so much better. I'm like, and you know what? You have been doing, you know, and making sure that I affirmed her to let her know, yes, you are doing so well, and you know, all these different things. But I said, you're looking at right now, I'm looking at down the road. Amen. Because I recognize that if we don't deal with this, it's gonna affect your job. It's going to affect your marriage. It's going to affect your children. It's going to affect all of your relationships if we don't deal with it. And I said, you know what? And I realized that Dad and I we're making a hard choice for our family. Absolutely. Trust me, this is the hardest decision I've ever had to make. I said, but I know that if we deal with this, I'm like, Mara, we're going to get on the other side. We're going to be on the side of victory. But we got to deal with it. You know, we got to deal with it.
And you talk about, I mean, empowering, because you are empowering her, you know, to manage her. You know what I'm saying? And do it in such a real and authentic way where she's not, you know, like this stigma of something's going on, something's wrong. It's like, no, I understand how I, you know, what are some of the things that, you know, that trigger me, or what my responses are. Right. Come up with these different coping mechanisms. Like all of that is so powerful. All of that. At this age, because to your point, you know, you're preparing her for the long haul. I mean, we have people today who, you know, 40, 50, 60s, right? Who's never dealt with self. And they show up in the workplace and everything else.
And it shows up in so many areas of their lives. And so that's why it was important for us. Like, you know what, we need to deal with this, because if we deal with it now, because I'm like, life is just going to get more challenging. Stuff's going to be thrown at you and, you know, whatever. And I'm like,
as you get older, people's or even grace for it.
We talk about that all the time. I would always tell her, when you're at home, you get grace. But when you go out in the world, they're not going to deal with you. You know, whatever. And I said, so let's work on this. And so I wanted her to see that this was a team effort. This wasn't me locking you away or us locking you away for you to go deal with something. No, we were right there with you the whole time. I even got, when I would do prayer walks, when around this time, I would turn on my voice memo and just record myself talking to God. Like, you know, and I have yet to go back and listen to him, but I'm like, whatever comes up, you know, just talking to God and really being honest with what I felt and, you know, the challenges we were going through, and even praying for her and everything. And you know what? And when I tell you, this has helped me to experience God on an even greater level than I ever in my entire life.
And then I think even experiencing the love of parenting, you know, the love between a parent and the child. Like a lot of people, we don't get tested in that way, you know, to really have to display and then walk your child through something.
Walk your child through it. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And I remember even when she went back to school, we had to meet with the counselor at school before, you know, they did like a re-entry thing too.
Right.
They even went over with her. Well, you know, if some of your friends ask where have you been or whatever, what do you tell them?
Right.
And I told her, I said, so, you know, we were coming up with, so I said, but what I don't want you to do is lie. If you want to tell them where you were, you tell them. If you don't have to just, hey, I was away. I went to another school, which she did. I'm like, but what I did not want her to do is I didn't want to put shame on her or guilt on her or whatever. I'm like, if you want to tell them, you tell them, but you will not, do not feel shame. And so I have, I've just really been trying my best to walk through this with her and to really own it. To deal with it.
Right.
And I mean, you know, and we're constantly like like I said, constantly pivoting. Like whatever, let's try this, let's try that, whatever. And when I tell you being open and trying, like getting away from the conventional approaches, has really, really helped us. Oh my goodness. It's opened up doors. Even when you know, she comes home and this personality, she knows I'm like, Amari, you're in 7th grade. Why do you know what's going on the 8th grade hall? Because people tell me stuff or whatever. I'm like, I'm sorry, that's drama. But she comes home and she want to talk and she be talking my ear off. But I'm like, you know what, God, I thank you that she's talking to me. I thank you that she's been honest with how she's feeling, because a lot of times we follow it up and we put on this face, you know. And you know, and that's what she was doing. That's why nobody could see. Nobody saw what she was dealing with internally, because she was ashamed. Like, I can't show this to them or whatever. So she would save it till she got home and boom. Like,
This is such a powerful conversation on so many levels. But as you're talking, you know, I always think about like just the tenets of girlfriend therapy. And it really is to empower, to educate, to esteem, to encourage, to edify, like all of those things. And just in your testimony, I'm hearing all of that, and how you are, you know, how you're doing that with your daughter, along with the help of, you know, your village, you know, but then also how that is happening for you as well, you know, as the mother, like you are being, you know, you're educated about, okay, what this is and how to manage it.
Absolutely.
You're being empowered in that education, because now you can take ownership of it, you know, and really, and then I think the esteem that your daughter will get. Just she's learning. I mean, it's so fascinating, and you know, everybody has different journeys and different paths. But and I know it hasn't been easy, but but you sharing it, I think it really will. I know for certain that there's somebody who's going to hear this and really resonate with what your experience, and definitely learn something through it. So,
I remember going on Facebook and like literally looking for groups. You know, my type of person, I'm always trying to diagnose something. Like if I see this is what this is or whatever. So I'm going and I'm seeing all these different groups, and I belong to like groups that are like parents of kids with DMDD or whatever. But to read some of those stories, I remember the first time I went into those, and I'm looking at reading some of these parents, like the frustration and the things they were experiencing, and I'm like, oh my goodness, no. At that moment, I'm like, no, we can't, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, not wanting to own, like, oh my goodness. But my heart is so tender for those people.
Exactly.
And I see like those parents like looking at that as a safe place to be able to share, you know, and them having to fight for their kids in school.
Exactly.
Because, you know, I mean, it was just such an eye-opening experience. And this has been eye-opening for me. A lot of the things that I've learned, I actually shared with my team just recently, a lot of the things, especially with the DBT, the diabolical behavior therapy, I'm teaching it to them. I mean, I went and ordered the book so that I can learn more. Because I'm like, God, adults need this. Heck, I need this.
Exactly. It's funny because I'm like, I wrote it down. I'm like, I get like that's when I said, I was
Girl,
like,
look, I ordered this book. I got this huge book that I ordered. It has like worksheets and handouts and stuff. Because, like I said, I always tell them, I'm not trying to make somebody a therapist or a psychiatrist. I'm not that. But what I am trying to help to give you tools, some information, whatever, because oftentimes when kids have challenges, we label them.
Exactly.
We label them when that's really not what's going on, you know, whatever.
And it's something because, you know, we label them as children and they take that into adulthood.
Exactly.
And never finding the skills or the coping skills to just manage it.
Manage it. Yeah.
One thing I always say is like our main job is to manage ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And it's like whatever that is. Like I'm just a big fan of managing yourself. If you're angry,
self-management.
Right. Be right there. Figure out what that is, what triggered that anger, why, you know, and then ride that thing to you're back at peace, you know?
Exactly. And this therapy is really good because it does, it focuses on like those emotions. You know, because a lot of times we get an emotion and the behavior that comes from it is not one that's effective. And so, like, you know, so I'll even say to Amari when she's dealing with something, I said, okay. So she'll tell me what she's feeling. I said, now, how did you react or act? And was that helpful? Did that get you where you say no? But that doesn't happen if she's caught up. I can't talk to her then. I gotta pull back and just allow her to use her coping skills. Then she and I can talk. We can talk through it. Yeah.
So powerful, Felisha. And I know, like I said, I know people are hearing, and this, I tell you, this time always goes by so fast because there's so much more I'm sure we can talk about. But I wanted to give you an opportunity, like if there's something that you wanted to share, or if there's a parent that's watching this, and trying to anticipate maybe their feelings or questions they may have, what is like something that you would want to leave them with?
So for me as a parent, I think the first thing that I would say is give yourself grace. We beat ourselves up. I can remember walking around like, not wanting to say anything because of the judgment of others.
Right.
Or, when I messed up and I didn't get it right or whatever, I would beat myself up or, or even when she was dealing with things, I would blame like, what didn't we do? Or what did we do? Did we overdo this? We do, less of this, should be more of this or whatever. So definitely giving yourself grace.
Amen.
And then another thing is that whole ideal of soul care. I'm not just talking about self-care and, get a massage. All those are great because I love massages and exercising or whatever. But I'm talking about really depositing the word of God and
I love
God's character, God's identity, like affirming yourself, declaring God's word over your situation.
Amen.
I had somebody recently give me this book. It's called Daily Decrees.
I love that.
Yeah, Daily Decrees. And reading is like decreeing this over your family. Like, I have the peace of God. I have the mind of God. My daughter has the mind of God. That real soul care. And then get educated.
Amen.
There's a ton of information online now. Of course you can't trust everything, but you can go to, there are national websites that you can go to, YouTube and everything. Like, ask the hard question. Always says, we get kind of offended when we hear that word. Somebody says you're ignorant. Ignorant means you just don't know.
Exactly.
To me, there is no dumb question. If I don't know, I don't know. So I ask questions. Ask questions, even the things that somebody else be like, what? She don't know that, or they may see as dumb. Ask questions. Ask questions and do what we did. Get a village. I mean, get a village around you, people praying with you, whatever you need. Because this is the only way that we're going to be able to see victory, you
Amen.
know, or whatever. And I'm telling you, we're experiencing that as a result of everything that I just named. So
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
I love this so much.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful testimony, and I'm so grateful that, you know, again, that you were open enough to share it, because I really do believe that it's going to, you know, people are going to get healed, right, and delivered through this testimony, and not just for them, but for their children and their families. Like I said, time goes by just way too fast, but I thank you so much.
And I also want to say this, you know, understanding that God has a plan for
Amen.
the family, my child, and everything. That's why when I'm talking about with her being a little girl and what we saw, the Satan got a plan too, you know. So that's why you got to know the word of God to speak over your kid. And, you know, that's where that understanding the spiritual warfare piece of it too, like understanding what it was we were dealing with and everything. So I don't want to, you know, over spiritualize something, but I don't want to miss the spiritual aspect, the warfare that comes along with that. But yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you for allowing me to share. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I always get the pleasure of kind of going back and listening to it. And I always encourage people, like, listen, because there's so much good information that, you know, you want to listen to these messages over and over again. And then also connecting the dots. I think, you know, like I said, Kia Campbell a couple of weeks ago talked about, you know, mental health and kind of shared her perspective. But I think understanding it from a parent perspective as well, and then dealing with a young child, where, you know, a lot of times the diagnosis is ADHD, or, you know, or they may put them like on the spectrum of autism or whatever. To know that there are other things that, you know, as parents that we have to, you know, be on the lookout for with regards to our children, other mental health issues that they may run into. And then how these things, you know, some of it shows up for us as adults. When it's
undealt with. When it's undealt with, how it shows up. There's another book that I would recommend. And I read this. This book is called The Explosive Child. I forget who is by the guy. He's I think he's a PhD, but anyways, that book was so eye-opening to me. I mean, when I tell you, like, when he talked, one of the statements that he makes is, he says, kids will do well if they can. I have not met a kid.
I know what that means. Kids will do well if they can.
If they can. So basically, the premises behind this book is that there is, just as we like, if a child had a learning disability, or they had challenges with reading or math or whatever, how we give attention to it. We said there's a lag somewhere. Something is going on. He's saying that also, you know, a lot of times kids that are struggling with some of the things I just named, there's a lag in flexibility. You know, them changing the plans and, you know, different things, frustration tolerance and problem solving. And you think so they're dealing with all of this, and when they can't manage, they explode. So it's like, you know what, we're expecting something from them when there's a lagging of skills or imbalance or whatever. And he was like, if kids can do well, they will. You think, I don't know any kid that say, you know what, I just want to be this, you know what I mean, in a negative connotation. I don't know. You know, even like I said, when my daughter when she would have her episodes or whatever, she would come back and she was remorseful. She never, you know, was like, you know what, I'm glad this happened. That didn't happen. And I recognized there was a lag and there was an imbalance. And if she had the tools, she could respond differently. So kids will do well if they can.
I love that. So that's a perfect, I love that. Well, you know,
and look, goes along with it, parents will do well and respond well if they have the tools.
They know how. Exactly. And that, I mean, you can do that. That's universal. People will do well if they can. That's the perfect. I think the perfect note to end on. But this has been so eye-opening and fascinating. Thank you so much, Felisha, for just sharing your story and sharing your testimony and sharing your daughter's experience with us. I look forward to just the feedback and the testimonies that will come as a result of, you know, the information that you shared. Thank you so much. I cannot even say it enough. This has been so eye-opening and a real true blessing. So I appreciate you so much for taking the time to share with us.
You're welcome, dear. I appreciate it as well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Amen.